On the evening when my husband's new corporate headquarters was set to be unveiled, he forbade me from attending. "You'll just embarrass me," declared my mother-in-law Eleanor. She let out a harsh laugh and continued, "Your place is at home washing dishes. You're meant to be nothing more than a common housekeeper." But they were wrong. So very wrong. When darkness fell, my husband panicked, making countless phone calls as his celebration crumbled around him. My retribution was only just beginning. Before I tell this story, please leave a comment letting me know which part of the United States you're from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help the channel grow and bring you more captivating stories. That evening, hot steam from the iron hissed gently in the quiet bedroom. I, Madison, stood beside the ironing board, finishing the most expensive silk shirt belonging to my husband Richard, the one he would wear tomorrow. Tomorrow was the momentous day, the grand opening of the new headquarters for Clearwater Industries, the company we had built from nothing. The scent of luxury fabric softener filled the room, but my heart warmed much more remembering other fragrances. The smell of ramen noodles we shared in half portions in the tiny apartment we rented before. The aroma of strong black coffee I prepared at 3 a.m. to keep me company while he crafted his first business proposal. I smiled slightly. The new office was our dream, a glass tower in the heart of Chicago's financial district. I remember selling the only valuable inheritance my late father left me, a small family estate in Georgia, to secure the initial capital. I remember working double shifts, managing administration in the mornings and staying late into the night developing marketing strategies. Richard was the face of the company. He had a gift for speaking. I was the engine in the shadows, ensuring everything operated flawlessly. And now, we had achieved it. "Honey, your shirt is ready," I said softly. As I carefully hung the shirt, Richard emerged from his study. He looked imposing in the new watch I had given him for the company's 5th anniversary. He glanced at the shirt, and then looked at me. His gaze was cold, not the look of the Richard I knew. "What time do we leave tomorrow? Should I prepare the navy blue tie?" I asked, still enthusiastic. Richard didn't respond immediately. He walked to the minibar and poured himself a glass of cold water. He drank it in one gulp, and finally spoke. His voice was monotone, devoid of emotion. "You don't need to come tomorrow." I froze. The iron I still held felt cold. "What do you mean, darling?" "It's the opening of our office. I prepared the dress we bought in Paris last month." Richard snorted. He examined me from head to toe. My modest and long clothing, my simple house attire. A sneer formed on his mouth. "Listen, Madison. The people coming tomorrow are wealthy families, major investors, high-ranking officials, and high society folks. You would only be an embarrassment." I was breathless. "An embarrassment. I'm your wife, Richard. Precisely because you're my wife, you should know your place," he said curtly. "Your appearance. Forget it. I don't want my reputation ruined because you make a protocol or wardrobe mistake in front of them. Just stay home." Suddenly, a sharp laugh came from the living room. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, approached with a teacup. She was always there, always the fuel to fan the flames between us. "Richard is right," Eleanor intervened. Her overly made-up eyes looked at me with contempt. "Besides, events for important people aren't your place. Just stay home, wash the dishes, and clean the house. You're destined to be a housekeeper, not stand beside a chief executive." The insult was like a physical slap. I looked at Richard. I searched for defense. The remnant of the man who had cried on my shoulder when our first proposal failed. But Richard simply remained silent. He looked away as if approving every word his mother said. To him, I, the woman who helped build this palace from mud, was now worth less than a servant. "Enough. Let's not talk about this anymore. It's my decision," Richard said firmly. Then he fidgeted with his phone, typing something quickly. There was a slight smile on his face. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw that hot iron at their arrogant faces. I wanted to remind them that without my initial capital, without my hard work, Clearwater Industries would never exist. But I chose silence. I took a deep breath and swallowed the entire wound. This simple clothing had taught me patience, but tonight my patience had reached its limit. Fine, I said quietly, barely audible. If that's what you want. Eleanor smiled with satisfaction. Richard nodded, relieved there would be no drama. They didn't know that my silence wasn't a sign of agreement. My silence was the signal that calculation had begun. I returned to my room, leaving them behind to laugh and talk about how grand tomorrow's party would be. I sat on the edge of the bed. Finally, my tears fell. Not tears of pain, but of frozen fury. At that moment, Richard entered the bathroom. He was humming. The sound of the shower was heard. His expensive phone that I had bought him was on the nightstand. The phone vibrated. A notification appeared on the lit screen. I had never touched his personal belongings, but something urged me tonight. I glanced at the screen. The contact name was Victoria. The message made my blood stop circulating. Darling, my party dress is ready. How exciting that you'll present me as the partner of such a handsome chief executive. I'll be the happiest woman at that party tomorrow. So this was the reason. He hadn't just asked me not to come. He had asked me not to come because he was going to bring another woman to the event I had built with my blood and tears. He was going to present my lover as his partner. The pain disappeared instantly. It was replaced by something cold, sharp, and extremely focused. Richard had made a grave mistake. He and his mother had underestimated the wrong woman. They thought I was the submissive wife divided by housekeeper. They didn't know who I really was. The sound of the shower still continued. I took my phone. I wasn't going to cry anymore. Tonight I would plan my revenge. Tomorrow's party would be held, but it would be the party of his ruin. Richard emerged from the bathroom with a towel around his waist. The smell of expensive soap spread. He saw me sitting silently on the edge of the bed, still in the same clothes. Still not going to bed? There was slight suspicion in his voice. I raised my face and put on an expressionless look. I don't feel very well. I think I'll go to bed early. He observed my face for a moment, looking for any sign of resistance or tears. When he found nothing but a facade of false exhaustion, he seemed relieved. He and his mother were right. I was a weak woman, easy to bend. Good, he said. Don't forget to take your pills. Tomorrow I'll be very busy. Don't call me unless it's important. Of course, I responded dryly. He lay down, quickly took his phone, and turned his back to me. I could see his shoulders tremble slightly as he wrote a response to his lover. He thought I didn't know. He thought I was stupid. I waited 1 hour, 2 hours, and finally Richard's soft snoring sounded, followed by total silence in Eleanor's room across the hall. This luxurious house that I bought with my effort finally fell asleep without realizing the storm that was approaching. I got up from the bed silently. I didn't go to the guest room. I went down to my study. Richard and Eleanor thought this room was where I did my embroidery or read prayer books. They never entered this room. They didn't know that this room hidden behind a clean bookshelf was my personal command center. I sat in my chair and turned on the main computer screen. The screen didn't show cooking recipes or wardrobe tutorials. It showed complex data, stock charts, and the company structure. On that screen, Clearwater Industries, Richard's company, was just a small town in the corner of a much larger corporation, Sterling Holdings. And at the top of Sterling Holdings' organizational structure was a single name, Madison. I was the founder and sole owner of Sterling Holdings. Richard didn't know. He thought Sterling Holdings was a mysterious foreign investor who trusted him to run one of their subsidiaries in America. He didn't know that investor slept next to him every night. He didn't know that his chief executive's salary, his bonuses, this house, his car, everything came from my pocket. My patience was exhausted. Tonight I would reclaim what was mine. I made my first video call. The face of a middle-aged man, calm and determined, appeared on the screen. This was Mr. Harrison, my right-hand man, and the real chief financial officer of Sterling Holdings. Good evening, Ms. Madison. My apologies. Is there an urgent problem? He asked, seeing that the clock in his background showed 1 a.m. Good evening, Mr. Harrison. My voice was cold and professional. Not the voice of a mistreated wife, but that of a chief executive. I have some instructions for tomorrow morning. At 6 o'clock, Freeze all assets in the name of Richard Mitchell. Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow but didn't ask why. He was a professional. All assets, ma'am, including his payroll account, all personal accounts, the unlimited corporate credit card he possesses, and access to Clearwater Industries' operational funds. Block everything. Revert the company's spending authority back to me with immediate effect. Understood, ma'am. I'll execute it. Any other instructions? We have a catering team, an event organizer, and a security provider for the Clearwater Industries inauguration ceremony. Tomorrow I want you to withhold all payments. Contact them individually, even tonight. Tell them there's a serious administrative problem on the holding company's part. Cancel all services. Mr. Harrison was slightly surprised. Cancel, ma'am, but it's an important event. The guests. Those guests are my colleagues, Mr. Harrison. Don't let them down. I invited them on behalf of Sterling Holdings. Let them come. I want them to see the chaos with their own eyes. Mr. A. Harrison nodded with understanding. I'll do it, Ms. Madison. Everything will be arranged before dawn. The first call ended. I moved to the second. This time it was the security chief of Sterling Tower, the new building that was to be inaugurated. Of course, the building was also my property. Good evening, security chief, I greeted. Good evening, Ms. Madison. How can I help you? The preparations for tomorrow's event are 90% complete, he reported proudly. Plans have changed. There will be no inauguration tomorrow. The event in the name of Clearwater Industries has been canceled. The man kept a puzzled silence. Canceled. But ma'am, Chief Executive Richard, my orders are clear. Block access to the executive elevator that leads to the main hall. Turn off the air conditioning and sound system in that area. No person should enter the hall, I said firmly. Leave the main lobby open. Let the guests and journalists gather there. Understood. We'll execute, Ms. Madison. The second call ended. The wheels of revenge had begun to turn. The final step. I opened a travel app. I wouldn't be at home washing dishes tomorrow. I booked a first-class ticket for the earliest flight at 5:30 a.m. to Miami. I also booked one of the most luxurious private villas in Hawaii with direct ocean views. Everything charged to my main Sterling Holdings account. I packed my suitcase. Not a large suitcase, but a small carry-on bag. Inside were a few casual garments, my secret laptop, and important documents. I placed the suitcase next to the study door. I returned to the bedroom. Richard was still deeply asleep, probably dreaming of Victoria and his triumphant party. I looked at him steadily for a long time. There was no love left, only aversion and regret for having trusted the wrong man. I set an alarm on my phone. 4 a.m. I lay down next to Richard and closed my eyes. They wanted me to be a housekeeper. Tomorrow, I would show them what this housekeeper could do from a luxury villa facing the beach. I would tear down the sandcastle he built on his betrayal and do it while getting a massage and drinking coconut water. At 4 a.m., my phone alarm vibrated silently under my pillow. I turned it off immediately, soundlessly, so as not to wake Richard, deeply asleep in his lies. I got up from the bed like a shadow. Every movement of mine was calculated and silent. I had already showered and changed in the study. I quickly put on a discreet silk scarf. I took my small prepared carry-on bag next to the study door. I stopped for a moment in front of the main bedroom door. I looked at sleeping Richard. His peaceful face now looked strange and disgusting. Without hesitation, I left. I didn't call a taxi from the house. Richard might track it. I walked a few blocks through the quiet and dark neighborhood streets until I reached the main road. There I took a regular taxi, paying with cash I always kept for emergencies. Throughout the journey to the airport, I watched the city lights that began to fade before dawn's arrival. There were no tears or doubts, just a cold feeling of relief, as if the heavy weight I had carried for years had finally been released. I gave everything. My love, my loyalty, my fortune. He paid me with insults and betrayal. It was time for him to pay. The first-class flight was silent. I fell asleep for a while. It was the deepest sleep I had had in the last year. When the plane landed in Miami, the sun was just beginning to warm. The island air welcomed me with scents of salt and magnolia flowers. A private car already prepared by my Sterling Holdings secretary was waiting for me. The trip to the villa in Hawaii felt like a transition to another world. While I breathed the fresh air of Hawaii, back in my luxurious house in Chicago, Richard woke up and stretched, felt my side of the bed, and found it empty. He snorted. "Surely the housekeeper already got up," he muttered. He got up and got ready. He put on the silk shirt I had ironed last night. He sprayed himself with expensive cologne and arranged his hair perfectly. He looked in the mirror, a successful chief executive, a handsome man at the top of his game. He went down to the dining room. His mother, Eleanor, was already there, dressed in her best clothes, ready for her son's party. "Where is Madison? Hasn't she even prepared breakfast yet?" Eleanor asked sarcastically. "I don't know, Mom. She's probably still in her room. She'll be angry," Richard said indifferently. "Better this way so she doesn't bother. We can ask the maid to prepare breakfast." They ate greedily, talking about who would come, how beautiful Victoria would look next to Richard, and how lucky they were that simple Madison wasn't attending. Richard even laughed. "I can't imagine Madison standing among high society people with those loose clothes. They might confuse her with the catering staff." Eleanor laughed out loud. "You're incredible, Richard. Come on, go get Victoria. I'll follow in another car later." Richard nodded. He looked toward my room. "She really locked herself in. That girl is very stubborn," he said to himself. He didn't know. I was the one who locked my room door from the outside with a spare key before leaving, to buy time. Richard drove the luxury sports car I had bought him to pick up Victoria. In the car, Victoria, in her red dress, immediately kissed him. "Darling, I'm so nervous. Today is your big day." "It's our big day, Victoria," Richard corrected, taking her hand. "When all this is over, everyone will know who you are. You'll be Richard's true lady. I'm tired of that simple wife I have at home." "Really, darling, when will you divorce her?" Victoria asked flirtatiously. "Soon, after this inauguration. My position at Sterling Holdings will be stronger. Divorcing Madison will be very easy. Meanwhile, at the same time, I enjoyed a sumptuous breakfast on the terrace of my villa. In front of me stretched the private pool touching the blue of the Pacific Ocean. I wore comfortable casual clothes, a light cotton scarf, and sunglasses. I ordered fresh mango juice. My phone was on the table next to the tropical fruit plate. I had intentionally disabled notifications, but I left it on. I wanted to know exactly when the panic would begin. I enjoyed my serenity. True power isn't about how loud you can shout. It's about how calmly you can plan, and how precisely you can strike at the right moment. I thought, I didn't want any of this. I just wanted a happy family, a loyal husband. I hid my wealth because I wanted Richard to love me for who I was myself, not the owner of Sterling Holdings. But it turned out he only loved himself, even without the title. Richard and his mother forced me to use my ace up my sleeve. The afternoon approached. Richard's party should start at 4. I looked at my phone, 3:30. I was relaxed in my lounge chair, listening to the waves. Exactly at 3:45, my phone vibrated. An incoming call from Richard. I smiled clearly. He and Victoria had just arrived at the lobby. I let it ring a couple of times before answering. "Hello?" I said with a slightly drowsy voice, as if I had just woken up. On the other side of the line, Richard's laughter was heard, an arrogant laugh full of contempt. "Hello, darling. Did I interrupt your nap?" "Yes, I was just calling to make sure." "Don't forget to wash the dirty dishes at home, housekeeper." He laughed loudly, and I could hear Victoria's and Eleanor's laughter in the background. "Goodbye, my elite guests are waiting for me." Click. He hung up. I put my phone back down. That was his last laugh of that day. His last laugh as chief executive. I looked at the horizon. The real show was about to begin. Richard hung up Madison's phone with immense satisfaction. He, Victoria, and Eleanor got out of the car in the main lobby of Sterling Tower. Dozens of invited photographers and journalists immediately surrounded them. Camera flashes shone. "Congratulations, Chief Executive Richard, on your new offices. Chief Executive Richard, who is the beautiful lady by your side?" Richard smiled broadly. possessively embracing Victoria's waist. "This is my special colleague, Victoria," he responded with an ambiguity that provoked speculation. Victoria smiled shyly while Eleanor stood with her chin high. Absolute pride. They walked on the red carpet that should have led to the grand entrance, but when they reached the huge automatic glass doors, the atmosphere began to feel strange. The lobby was grand, with gleaming imported marble floors. However, it was full of people, not full of guests enjoying welcome drinks, but guests standing in small groups, looking confused and annoyed. The ambient music that should have played softly wasn't heard. The gigantic digital screen behind the reception desk should have shown a welcome video to Clearwater Industries' grand inauguration, but only a black screen was visible. "What is this?" Eleanor asked. Her voice began to sound impatient. Why are they crowding the guests in the lobby? How unprofessional. Richard also began to feel uncomfortable. He saw some important investors he knew speaking loudly to the building staff. "Maybe there's a small technical problem," Richard tried to assure Victoria, whose frown began to appear. "Darling, where are the drinks? I'm thirsty," Victoria complained. "Wait, let's go directly to the hall," Richard decided. He walked with an air of superiority toward the separate executive elevator line. Only for senior staff and VIP guests, the elevator led directly to the hall on the 50th floor. He took out his golden chief executive access card. He swiped it through the sensor. The light flashed red. Access denied. Wrinkles formed on Richard's forehead. He tried again. Access denied. "Damn elevator," he cursed quietly. He tried the elevator next to it. Same result. Cold sweat began to break out on his forehead. "Richard, what's wrong?" Eleanor asked. Her voice was loud and attracted the attention of nearby guests. "Why won't the elevator open? You're the chief executive. Call an employee." Richard was embarrassed. He turned around and shouted toward the reception desk. "Security staff, what's wrong with this elevator?" The building manager, in a clean uniform, who was busy being pulled from side to side by guests, ran toward Richard. His face was pale and sweaty. "Chief Executive Richard, I'm sorry. Sir, there's a problem," he said nervously. "What problem?" "I see the problem. The elevator doesn't work. My guests are stuck in the lobby. Where's the catering? Where's the music? This is my inauguration," Richard shouted. "That's the problem, sir," the manager swallowed. "We received a sudden instruction an hour ago. It came directly from the holding company." Richard's heart beat fast. "What instruction?" "I didn't give any instruction. The instruction is to cancel all facilities for the Clearwater Industries event, sir," the manager whispered, as if afraid to be heard. "All services have been canceled. Catering was asked to return their merchandise from the lobby. The audiovisual team was ordered to pack their equipment. Electricity and air conditioning systems in the 50th floor hall have already been cut." Richard's world seemed to collapse in an instant. "Cancel? Who dares to cancel? I'm the chief executive. Sterling Holdings trusted me." "The order came directly from Sterling Holdings' Supreme Board of Directors, sir," they said. "What did they say?" Richard shouted. "They said, the sir no longer has authority." The manager's voice was low, but it sounded like a bomb explosion in the suddenly silent lobby. Guests and journalists within earshot fell silent and whispers began. "What? No authority. Event canceled. Was he fired on Inauguration Day?" Camera flashes now weren't taking pictures of success, but of scandal. Journalists stepped forward. Microphones approached Richard's pale face. "Chief Executive Richard, is it true you've been fired? Who canceled the event? What's happening with Sterling Holdings?" Victoria, whose brain quickly processed the words, "no authority," instantly released Richard's arm. Her beautiful face transformed into panic and aversion. She stepped back. Eleanor became hysterical. "It's a lie. This is clearly sabotage. All of you are jealous of my son's success. Richard, call your boss. Call that investor." Richard was like a robot. His hands trembled violently as he took out his phone. He tried to call Mr. Harrison, the man he thought was his chief financial officer. The call went directly to voicemail. "The client cannot take your call." He tried to call his bank manager. "Chief Executive Richard, I'm very sorry, but I just received an email. All your corporate cards and company accounts in your name have been frozen effective 1 hour ago. There's a sudden holding company audit. Frozen? Richard repeated the word as if in a trance. This wasn't an error. This wasn't simple sabotage. This was a planned, quick, and brutal attack. The entire foundation of his life had been torn away in a matter of minutes. He looked around the chaotic lobby. Investors looked at him with angry eyes. Journalists photographed him like a circus animal. Victoria looked at him as if he were trash. Only one person was missing. The only person he had insulted minutes before. Madison. He didn't know why, but his instinct told him Madison knew something. Maybe she had snitched to Sterling Holdings, but snitched what? With trembling hands, he searched for Madison's name in his contacts, pressed the call button. He needed to vent his rage. He needed someone to blame. While the phone rang in his ear, the poor building manager approached again. Chief Executive Richard, I'm sorry I have to inform you of this. What else? Richard shouted in frustration. This cancellation order. An official document just arrived at our email. It was digitally signed by the owner of Sterling Holdings. Who? What's the name? The manager looked at his tablet screen. In the name of Ms. Madison Mitchell. Richard froze. The name was his wife's name, but Mitchell was Madison's maiden name. He had never bothered to know what his wife's maiden name was. Madison, he whispered. He looked at the phone in his hand that was still trying to connect with Madison. On the other side, finally, a voice was heard. Hello. Madison's voice was calm, and the sound of distant waves was heard in the background like music. Madison's voice on the other side of the phone was so calm, so serene. The sound of waves, which sounded like background music, now sounded like mockery to Richard, standing in the middle of the lobby full of chaos. Madison! Richard screamed into the phone. His voice broke hysterically from extreme fury and fear. Journalists approached, capturing every moment of his fall. Where are you? What have you done? Why was the party canceled? On the other side, in her luxurious villa in Hawaii, Madison slowly sipped her mango juice, adjusted her sunglasses, and looked at the bright blue sea. Wow, darling. Why are you shouting? Weren't you at the party? It's already started, hasn't it? Her voice was innocent, feigning confusion. Don't play dumb, Madison. Richard roared like a wounded lion. The building manager told me. He said you canceled everything. He mentioned your name. Madison Mitchell. Who is that? What does all this mean? In the lobby, Eleanor heard Madison's name and her face, which was pale, turned red with rage. Madison, how dare that woman? She surely used some witchcraft, ruining my son's party. Richard, give me that phone. Richard, in panic, handed the phone to his mother. Eleanor immediately screamed in a high voice. Madison, ungrateful wife, what black magic have you used, eh? You ruined my son's party. Do you want me to curse you until you die of old age? Fix the party right now, or I won't let you set foot in our house again. There was a moment of silence on the other side. Madison laughed, not a soft or sad laugh, but a clear, free, and triumphant laugh. A laugh Richard and Eleanor had never heard before. House. Madison spoke again. Her soft and submissive voice was gone, replaced by a cold, firm, and authoritative voice. What house are you referring to, ma'am? The house I bought with my own money? The house that's in my name on the deed? Oh, ma'am, you don't have to worry. You won't set foot in that house again. Eleanor was speechless. What? What do you mean? Richard took the phone back. The building manager wasn't wrong. I was the one who canceled everything. I'm Madison Mitchell, founder and sole owner of Sterling Holdings. That company you were running, Clearwater Industries, is just a small subsidiary whose initial capital was raised by selling the estate I inherited from my father. You were, Richard, just a puppet chief executive I paid a salary. The phone almost fell from Richard's hand. Blood had drained from his face, leaving him like a corpse. It's a lie. You are. Sterling Holdings is a Swiss investor. You are. You're just my wife. I'm your wife. Madison interrupted. The wife you said would only embarrass you. The wife you said was destined to be a housekeeper. The wife you forbade from coming to her own party because you were too busy bringing your lover, That girl named Victoria, right? Victoria startled at hearing her name. She didn't expect Richard's wife to know. How? Richard stammered. You thought I was stupid, Richard. That my silence didn't mean I was blind. And now, your game is over. Richard staggered. He would have fallen if he hadn't leaned on the reception counter. This can't be. This is a nightmare. His simple wife, always submissive. The woman with the scarf he thought was dumb and provincial, was the owner of Sterling Holdings, the owner of this building, the owner of his life. Madison, darling, this must be a misunderstanding. Richard immediately changed his voice, from the roar of a lion to the whimper of a kitten. Darling, please, please don't make this joke. The guests are looking at me. This is my reputation. Your reputation. Madison laughed again. This time it was cynical. Your reputation already collapsed when you decided to betray me, when you sided with your mother to insult me. Your reputation ended when you sent that love message to Victoria last night. Richard's panic reached its peak. He no longer cared about journalists or guests, not even Victoria or his mother. He had to beg Madison. Darling, please, where are you? I'm going right now. I'll apologize. I'll kneel at your feet. Please restart the party. I beg you, Madison. Oh, I'm sorry, darling, Madison said, her voice falsely light. I'm busy right now. As your mother said before, I'm washing dishes. Madison, don't do this. It's not funny. Of course it's not funny, but it's immensely satisfying, Madison replied. I'm in Hawaii now, darling, enjoying the view from my private villa. The dishes at this 5-star hotel are very clean, not like the dirty dishes you asked me to go wash at home. Click. Madison hung up. Richard stared at the dark screen of his phone. Silence. The entire lobby was looking at him. He tried to call back. The call was rejected. He called again, rejected. 5 calls, 10 calls, 20 calls. He made dozens of hysterical calls, but Madison no longer answered. His number was blocked. He tried to call Eleanor. Mom, where are you? I'm in the car. I can't stand the shame. His mother's voice sounded panicked on the other side. Let's go home, Richard. We have to go home right now. I have to talk to Madison. I have to scold that girl. Go home. Go home. Richard was in a trance. He no longer cared about Victoria looking at him with disgust. He no longer cared about investors shouting that he was a fraud. He pushed through the crowd of journalists and ran out of the lobby, getting into his car. Quick, Mom, we have to go home. This is crazy. All this is crazy. Richard floored the accelerator, leaving behind the chaos of Sterling Tower. He still hoped all this was a cruel joke. He still hoped Madison was at home crying and everything could be fixed. He didn't know his nightmare had just begun. The road home felt like the road to the gallows. Richard drove like a madman, recklessly overtaking other cars. Eleanor, sitting in the passenger seat, ranted nonstop, blaming Madison, Victoria, the building manager, and everyone except herself and her son. How dare that ungrateful wife-woman? She surely stole your money, Richard. She surely forged documents. A dumb woman can't have such a big company. All this is her trick. Eleanor screamed incessantly. Richard didn't respond. His brain struggled to process the information he had just received. Madison was Sterling Holdings. Madison was his boss. Madison was the owner of everything. If that was true, he hadn't just lost his job. He had lost everything. He remembered all the little things he had ignored. He remembered that Madison never asked him for money. He remembered that Madison always stayed calm when he complained about financial problems at the beginning of their marriage. And suddenly that Swiss investor appeared. He remembered that Madison sometimes had business phone calls in fluent English, which he thought was just showing off. He remembered that Madison had easily approved the purchase of the luxury house and sports car. Richard thought Madison had been intoxicated with his wealth, but actually Madison had paid for it. Idiot! 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 He hit the steering wheel. He wasn't just a traitor. He was the stupidest man on earth. He had insulted a queen disguised as a servant. The sports car roared as it entered through the main gate of his luxury subdivision. In the distance, Richard could see his magnificent house. But something was wrong. The automatic doors were firmly closed, and standing in front of the doors were 2 security guards in black uniforms he didn't know. Next to them was a man he knew very well, Mr. Harrison, the man Richard thought was his chief financial officer, the man whose call had gone to voicemail moments ago. The man now stood in a crisp suit, looking at him with a cold and emotionless expression. Next to him was another man with a thick leather folder. "Why are they here?" Eleanor whispered. "Richard, just ram the door." "Are you crazy, Mom?" Richard shouted. He stopped the car right in front of the door. His heart beat so hard it hurt. He got out of the car, followed by Eleanor, who had a forced expression of arrogance. "Mr. Harrison, what is all this? Why are you here and not at the office? And who are these people? Why is our door closed?" Richard still tried to pretend he was in control. Mr. Harrison looked at Richard. The look was no longer that of a subordinate to a superior, but that of a superior to something much lower. "Good evening, Chief Executive Richard," Mr. Harrison said. His voice was formal and sharp. "I'm here by direct order of the owner of Sterling Holdings, Ms. Madison Mitchell." The confirmation hit Richard again. It was true. "First," Mr. Harrison continued, "you no longer work for Clearwater Industries or any Sterling Holdings subsidiary, effective 1 hour ago. This is your official termination letter." The man next to Mr. Harrison stepped forward and handed Richard a thick envelope. Richard received it with trembling hands. "Second, Mr. Harrison said again, "this house and everything it contains is property of Sterling Holdings, provided as a facility for your position. Given that your position has been terminated, this facility will be recovered." Eleanor's face turned white. "Recovered? This is my son's house. Our house." "No, ma'am," Mr. Harrison corrected calmly. "This is Ms. Madison's house, and she has requested that you vacate the premises. Let's see." Mr. Harrison looked at his watch. "You have exactly 1 hour. You have 50 minutes left before our team enters to pack your personal belongings." "Vacate? 1 hour? Where are we supposed to live?" Eleanor screamed hysterically. "That's no longer Sterling Holdings' concern," Mr. Harrison replied with indifference. "Oh, and one more thing." The man with the leather folder stepped forward again. "This is the divorce petition Ms. Madison is sending you." Richard now held 2 documents, the termination letter and the divorce petition. "This divorce petition," the lawyer added, "comes with a claim for damages for the embezzlement of company funds you committed." "Embezzlement," Richard stammered. "Yes. The purchase of a secret apartment for Miss Victoria in the magnificent Mile neighborhood. Regular monthly transfers to your personal account, luxury gifts, vacations, all using corporate accounts. Ms. Madison has all the evidence, receipts, CCTV recordings, bank statements. Everything is perfect." This was no longer a dismissal. This was total destruction. Madison hadn't just reclaimed her throne. She had made sure not to leave Richard anything to start a new life. He would go to jail. No, this can't be. Madison can't be so cruel. Richard finally collapsed to his knees on the hot asphalt. He cried, the cry of a completely destroyed man. Eleanor lost all her arrogance seeing her son kneeling. She staggered and collapsed on the sidewalk. Her world of luxury, which she had boasted about to all her social group friends, had crumbled in an instant. "Please, Mr. Harrison." Richard crawled, trying to grab Mr. Harrison's trouser leg. "Please, speak to Ms. Madison. I was wrong. It was a momentary mistake. I'll do anything. I'll leave Victoria." Mr. Harrison stepped back, looking at Richard with aversion. Ms. Madison's message was just one. "Chief Executive Richard," she said, "as you once told her that her destiny was to be a housekeeper, now she wants you to enjoy something worse. Enjoy your new life." Mr. Harrison signaled to the 2 new security guards. "Make sure they only take personal clothing. Company assets, valuables, watches, electronics, vehicles must stay here. Your time starts now." Victoria, in the chaos of Sterling Tower's lobby, finally managed to get an app taxi. She looked with irritation at the chaotic building. The man she thought was a gold mine was just a fraud. When the taxi started moving, she received a notification on her phone, an email from her bank. It said that her additional credit card and the apartment Richard had given her, both, had been recovered and seized by Sterling Holdings. Damn, Victoria cursed. She had just realized she was also a victim of this grand plan. She was as ruined as Richard. Richard was still kneeling on the hot asphalt in front of the firmly closed door of his house. The termination letter and divorce petition in his hands felt heavier than a stone. Next to him, Eleanor was collapsed on the sidewalk. Her gaze was empty, still unable to believe what had just happened. The luxury that was the foundation of her life had been torn from her in an instant. Mr. Harrison stood like a statue between the two new security guards with firm expressions. They showed no mercy. "Time is running, Chief Executive Richard. Mrs. Eleanor," Mr. Harrison said in a monotone voice. 50 minutes. Eleanor snapped out of her trance with a start. Her empty face transformed into rage in an instant. "I'm not leaving. This is my house. I'm Richard's mother. Richard bought this house." She got up and tried to force her way through the door. "Madison, come out, you cunning woman. You can't throw me out." One of the security guards stepped forward. His muscular body blocked Eleanor's path. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Our boss's orders are clear. You're no longer a resident here. Cooperate, please. Get out of here, thugs. Ungrateful servants," Eleanor shouted. Richard stood up with what strength he had left. He pulled his mother's arm. "Enough, Mom, enough. We've lost." The words tasted bitter to him. "Let's pack our things." Mr. Harrison nodded once. A small door next to the main door opened. "Enter. Our team will guide you to your respective rooms. You're only allowed to take personal clothing and sentimental items with no resale value. Jewelry, watches, electronics, vehicles, all company assets stay here." This was the final insult. They were escorted to their own house like thieves. A security guard guided Richard to the master bedroom and another to Eleanor to her room. In front of his room door were already 2 large cardboard boxes ready. 30 minutes, sir," said the security guard accompanying Richard. Richard entered the grand bedroom. Madison's soft perfume still lingered. On the dresser, all of Madison's belongings had disappeared. Her side of the closet was also empty. She had already planned all this. She had left long ago. Richard opened his closet. Dozens of imported suits hung neatly. The drawers were full of silk shirts and various luxury watches worth millions of dollars. He tried to grab his favorite watch. "I'm sorry, sir." The security guard's voice stopped him. "That's a company facility." Richard clenched his fists, turned around and opened the underwear drawer. He started throwing t-shirts, underwear, and socks into the cardboard box. He took out some old jeans and a few faded casual shirts. He wasn't even allowed a travel suitcase, just this shameful brown cardboard box. Meanwhile, in the next room, Eleanor's hysterical screams were heard. "Don't touch it. That's my purse. I bought it." Richard heard the security guard's calm voice. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This purse is registered in the asset audit. It was purchased with the corporate card. These are my jewels. These diamonds are real. My son bought them for me. I'm sorry, ma'am. Orders are orders. You can only take clothing." Eleanor cried bitterly. She threw her expensive clothes into the box, cursing Madison non-stop. "The devil with the scarf. That snake. I won't forgive you, Madison. I'll curse you for 7 generations." Richard closed his eyes. His mother's curses sounded hollow. They no longer had anything left to curse with. Having finished packing, Richard sat on the edge of the bed. He saw a photo on the nightstand, their wedding photo. Madison smiled so sincerely, her eyes shining with happiness. She looked beautiful in her bridal scarf. Richard took the frame, trying to put it in the box. "Leave the photo too, sir," said the security guard. "The frame is pure silver. It's a company asset." Richard threw the photo to the floor. The glass broke into 1,000 pieces. Madison's happy face was now cracked. "Take it! Take it all!" Richard shouted in frustration. He slammed his cardboard box shut. Time finished. Richard and Eleanor were escorted back to the house lobby. Mr. Harrison and the lawyer waited near the exit. "One more thing," the lawyer said. "Ms. Madison is still thinking about the fate of your mother, Mrs. Eleanor." Eleanor raised her head with a spark of hope. "Ms. Madison has paid 6 months' rent for a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. Here's the address." The lawyer handed over a piece of paper. We hope Mrs. Eleanor can fend for herself after 6 months. Apartment, Eleanor whispered. After all this, she gave me an apartment? What kind of insult is this? And me? Richard asked quietly. The lawyer looked at Richard. You're not on the list, Chief Executive Richard. Ms. Madison thought a man like you could fend for himself. That slap hurt more than the termination letter. Madison still felt pity for the mother who had insulted her, but not for him. Madison had completely abandoned him. Now please leave, Mr. Harrison said. Richard and Eleanor left their house for the last time, each hugging their cardboard box, the sound of the door closing and locking behind them. The click of the new key sounded like a death sentence. They were now officially homeless. They stood on the lonely sidewalk, without a car, without a driver. The phone in Richard's pocket vibrated. He saw Victoria's name on the screen. He pressed the reject button. The phone vibrated again. Victoria called again. Richard rejected again. A moment later, a text message arrived, all in capital letters. Fraud. So you were a puppet chief executive. Beggar man. Never contact me again. My cards and apartment were seized because of you. Give me back my time, idiot. Richard read the message without understanding. This was the woman he had adored, the woman for whom he had insulted his own wife. Who is it? Eleanor asked harshly. Victoria, Richard answered emptily. That concubine. Eleanor exploded suddenly. She tried to snatch the phone from Richard. It's all her fault. She poisoned your heart. She made you go against Madison. Richard looked at his mother. Her face, full of rage, now looked old and miserable. No, Mom, Richard said in a low and hoarse voice. It's not because of Victoria. It's because of us. Eleanor froze. What did you say? It's because of our arrogance, because of our greed, because we didn't know how to appreciate, Richard said. Because you called Madison a housekeeper and I let you do it. It was the first confession. A confession too late. Eleanor couldn't respond. They remained silent. There were no more words. The sun began to descend below the horizon, tinting the sky an ironically beautiful orange. They had to walk. Two people who were once kings and queens now walked aimlessly through the luxury subdivision, hugging cardboard boxes with the remains of their lives. When they reached the main gatehouse to wait for a taxi, an app taxi stopped across the street, dropping off a passenger. Richard accidentally looked inside the taxi when the doors opened. It was Victoria. Clearly, she had returned to her seized apartment. Victoria also saw Richard. She saw him sweaty with his wrinkled shirt hugging a cardboard box. She saw Eleanor with her disheveled hair and eyes full of hatred. The taxi began to pass by them. Victoria rolled down the window, said nothing, simply spat on the asphalt aiming right where Richard was standing. Beggar, she shouted, and the taxi sped away, leaving Richard frozen in place. Insulted by his wife, fired, evicted, betrayed by his lover, and now spat on. His ruin was complete. The trip to their new address was a long agony. Richard finally got a regular taxi after waiting almost half an hour at the gatehouse, having to endure the shame. The taxi driver looked at them and their cardboard boxes with suspicion. The journey took them farther and farther from the bright city center, from the clean streets and glass towers. They entered an increasingly crowded, increasingly messy, increasingly noisy district. Eleanor kept complaining. The air conditioning isn't cold. This taxi smells like tobacco. Why is it so slow? Are you sure about this address, Richard? Madison is surely setting a trap for us. She's sending us to a dump. Richard turned around, looking out the window without saying anything. He had no strength to argue. Every complaint from his mother was a reminder of his own mistakes. He was responsible for them being here. After more than an hour, the taxi stopped in front of a narrow alley where not even a car could enter. We've arrived, sir. The house is inside that alley. It's number 27, the taxi driver said. Richard paid the fare with the last cash he had left in his wallet. His money had truly run out. Eleanor looked at the muddy alley in front of her with horror. No, I'm not going in there. That's not a house. It's a rat's den. Richard, I won't do it. "We have no other choice, Mom," Richard shouted. His frustration finally exploded. He took his cardboard box from the trunk. "Mom, do you want to sleep on the street tonight? Then do it. I'm going in." Richard entered the narrow alley, dragging his box. Eleanor, crying, was forced to follow him. They became a spectacle for local residents who were sitting in front of their houses. Whispers and small laughs followed their steps. House number 27 was a small one-room apartment at the end of the alley. The wall paint was peeling. The iron door was rusted. Richard opened the unlocked door, and a smell of humidity and mold hit them immediately. The house was exactly what Eleanor feared. A small living room with only 2 old wooden chairs, 2 narrow bedrooms that could barely contain a thin mattress, and a dirty, squat toilet. There was no air conditioning, just a dusty ceiling fan in the living room. Eleanor dropped her box and started screaming. Not screams of rage, but sharp screams of desperation. "No, I can't live here. It's hot. It smells bad. It's dirty. Richard, do something. Call Madison. Tell her to stop acting. I'm your mother, Richard. Tell her to apologize to me." She collapsed on the dirty floor, sobbing. Richard stood, leaning against the humid wall. He took out his phone. He knew it was useless, but he tried. He called Madison. "The client has blocked your call." He tried to call Mr. Harrison. Blocked. He tried to call the office. His number was no longer registered. "Our numbers are blocked, Mom," he said quietly. "We can't contact anyone. This is our home now." The first night was hell. The heat was unbearable. The fan only moved stale air. Mosquitoes swooped on their unaccustomed skin and feasted. Eleanor didn't stop crying and complaining until she fell asleep from exhaustion. On the thin, hard mattress, Richard couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark living room, accompanied by the sound of an argument in the next house, and motorcycles passing on the road. He was hungry. Since the sumptuous breakfast of the morning, which seemed to have been 1,000 years ago, they hadn't eaten anything. He checked his empty wallet. He checked the banking app on his phone. 0 marked on all frozen accounts. He didn't have a single dollar. He, Richard Mitchell, former chief executive, didn't have money to buy a package of ramen. Ironically, before he and Madison shared ramen for love, and now he had to starve for his betrayal. The following days were even harder. Eleanor refused to do anything. She simply sat in the wooden chair, looking into emptiness, or crying or blaming Richard. The house got dirtier and dirtier. The bowls of noodle soup Richard had bought with his last coins piled up in the kitchen. "Mom, at least wash the dishes," Richard said. "What are you asking me to wash dishes? You forgot who I am." "I'm your mother, and I'm your son who has nothing," Richard replied. "We don't have a housekeeper anymore, Mom. Madison was right. Now you have to wash dishes. Or do you want us to eat our food on leaves?" Driven by hunger and desperation, Richard was forced to do something he had never done in his life. He took the pile of dirty dishes, went to the bathroom, and started washing them with the soap that was there. His hands, once accustomed to expensive pens and sports car steering wheels, were now covered with dirty, soapy water. Meanwhile, karma came to Eleanor from another side. Her phone, whose data plan was still active, began to flood with messages from her social group friends. "Eleanor, where are you? Why didn't you come to your son's party? Eleanor, I heard the rumors. Is it true Richard was fired? Oh my God. Eleanor, I just saw the video on the gossip account. Is that Richard being thrown out of the office and Victoria spitting on him? How embarrassing." The news of Richard's fall spread like wildfire, including the photo of Richard kneeling before Mr. Harrison and the humiliating video of Victoria spitting. Eleanor's name, always so arrogant and boastful, now became an object of mockery. She was expelled from her social group's luxurious WhatsApp group. Her high society friends blocked her number. She was isolated. Desperate for lack of money, Eleanor remembered something. She still had a treasure, her jewelry and purses that were in her wallet when she was expelled. Not much, but enough to survive. "Richard, take me to the jewelry store," she said one day with the strength she had left. Richard gathered what little energy he had left and walked with her to the nearest market. Eleanor entered a small jewelry store with what arrogance she had left. She took out the diamond necklace she had always boasted about. "Sir, I want to sell this. It's a real diamond. Look, it must be expensive." The jewelry store owner took the necklace, observed it with a magnifying glass, and then rubbed it against a stone. He shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This is fake. These stones are cubic zirconia of the lowest quality." "Fake?" Eleanor shrieked. "Impossible. My son bought it for me. It's worth millions of dollars. Surely you're trying to cheat me." "Check the others," Richard said. Eleanor took out her rings and earrings. The jeweler checked them one by one. "Fake. This is also fake. Everything is costume jewelry, ma'am." Eleanor turned to Richard, her eyes demanding an explanation. Richard couldn't look his mother in the eyes. He was extremely embarrassed. It was true. He had bought his mother fake jewelry and super fake purses. He had been too stingy to buy his mother real things because all the money stolen from the company had been spent on Victoria. Victoria's apartment was real. Victoria's car was real. Victoria's jewelry was real. But for his own mother, he gave fakes. The reality hit Eleanor like a freight train. She hadn't just lost her status, she realized she had never truly possessed it. She was just a fake ornament. Just like her jewelry, her own son had deceived her. "Richard, you are..." Eleanor was speechless. Her vision blurred. The shame, the rage, and the understanding that she had insulted a genuine woman like Madison for the false pride her son gave her was too heavy. She collapsed, fainting in the middle of the dirty, muddy market floor. Richard was in panic. Mom, wake up, help, help!" His mother-in-law's karma had arrived. The woman who once insulted Madison, telling her she was destined to be a housekeeper, now fainted in a sordid market, surrounded by fakes, with nothing but humiliation. The panic Richard felt seeing his mother collapsed on the dirty market floor was a new type of panic. It wasn't about losing reputation or money. It was about losing the only person he had left in his world, even if that person was as toxic as he was. Mom, wake up!" he shouted, shaking Eleanor's limp body. Market people surrounded him. Some felt pity. Others recognized his face from gossip news. "Isn't that the ruined chief executive?" "Call an ambulance," Richard shouted, but he knew he had no money to pay. A compassionate vendor threw water on Eleanor's face, but she didn't move. Her eyes were closed and her breathing was shallow. "The ambulance is expensive, sir. Take her to Don Manuel's clinic at the end of the street. Use a tricycle," someone suggested. Richard, with the help of some residents, put his mother's body on a tricycle. He promised the tricycle driver he would pay him later, an empty promise that made him feel even more despicable. In the small clinic, it smelled of medicine and pain. The doctor, Don Manuel, a tired-looking old man, quickly examined Eleanor. He took her blood pressure. His eyes looked at Richard with immediate seriousness. "This isn't a simple fainting, sir," Don Manuel said. "Blood pressure is extremely high. Symptoms indicate a shock-induced stroke. Her left side is already weak. You have to take her to a hospital immediately." "Hospital?" Richard repeated. The word sounded like a death sentence. I don't have money," Don Manuel sighed. "Then there's not much I can do. I'll give her an injection to lower pressure to stabilize her temporarily, but she needs a CT scan and intensive care. Without that, her condition can worsen rapidly. It could be permanent paralysis or something worse." Richard collapsed in the worn waiting chair. Paralysis. The word echoed in his head. He couldn't take care of his mother. He couldn't even buy food for himself. It was right in this smelly clinic where Richard hit rock bottom. He had no choice. He felt his pockets. He had already sold his old phone to buy food during the last few days. But there was one thing he had hidden. The luxury wristwatch he had hidden in the fold of his pants when he was expelled. The watch he wore at the inauguration was the only asset Mr. Harrison's team didn't take. He ran out, leaving his mother unconscious. He ran back to the market looking for a store that bought secondhand watches. He knew the watch was worth millions of dollars, but he wasn't in a position to negotiate. He needed cash now. The market watch shop owner looked at Richard and then at the watch in his hand. He recognized Richard. He smiled cunningly. A good piece, Chief Executive Richard. But the market is depressed now. And although it looks genuine, I have to take a risk. I'll give you $5,000. $5,000? Richard was outraged. This watch is worth $3 million. Offer it somewhere else, sir, the owner said, turning around. But I doubt anyone wants to do business with you, since your case is hot right now. Richard trembled. He needed the money. He hated the store owner, but he hated himself more. Agreed, he whispered. $5,000 cash. The $5,000 now felt like dust in his hand. Just a few days ago, he could spend millions on Victoria in one night. He returned to the clinic, paid the consultation fee and injection, and also paid the tricycle driver. He still had some money left, enough to take his mother back to the apartment and maybe buy some basic medicines. The days became a hellish routine. Eleanor regained consciousness. But as Don Manuel warned, her left side was weak. She couldn't walk. Her speech was slurred. The woman, who was once arrogant and loud, was now bedridden on the smelly mattress, wearing diapers, only able to moan like a baby. She needed complete nursing care, and the person who had to do it was Richard. Richard, who had been served all his life, now had to clean his mother's excrement and urine. He had to feed her noodle soup. He had to bathe her. The $5,000 was quickly depleted on medicines and food. Desperation became bitter resentment. He hated Madison. He hated his mother. He hated his life. He had to look for work. But who would hire Richard Mitchell, the fraud chief executive, whose photo was in all the gossip accounts? He tried to apply as a supermarket cashier. The manager laughed in his face. He tried to be a motorcycle app driver. His account was rejected due to his case history. Finally, the only job he could get was where his downfall began, the market. The market thug boss offered him a job as a warehouse boy, carrying rice sacks, pushing rotten vegetable carts, cleaning fish remains. At dawn, Richard accepted the job with the last vestige of his shattered pride. The work destroyed his body. His hands, once soft, were now calloused and full of blisters. His back hurt every night. They paid him a daily wage, barely enough to buy noodle soup for his mother and a sack of rice for him. He worked from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. He returned to the apartment stinking of sweat, fish, and garbage. Eleanor, in her semi-conscious state, often cried when Richard gave her noodle soup. "I'm sorry, son," she babbled. "Enough, Mom. Just eat," Richard responded dryly. Suffering hadn't made him a better son. Suffering had only made him more bitter. One afternoon, while moving a sack of potatoes, he saw a piece of old newspaper in the garbage pile. On the front page was Madison's face. She smiled brilliantly. Her scarf looked very expensive and elegant. The headline was, "Madison Mitchell launches the Madison Foundation for Female Empowerment." There was the date and place of the launch in a hotel hall in Hawaii. 2 days later. A crazy idea. A last hope appeared in his head. This was his chance, not to apologize. He was already too far to say those words. This was a chance to beg, to plead. He would go there, meet Madison, kneel at her feet in front of everyone. He no longer cared about his pride. He just wanted money. He wanted to get out of this hell. A final encounter to decide his fate with his wife. The hotel hall in Hawaii shone with crystal lights, filled with the most influential people in the nation. Ministers, major businessmen, celebrities, and social activists all gathered for an event much more significant than an office inauguration, the launch of the Madison Foundation. On stage, Madison stood gracefully. An ivory silk scarf framed her calm and dignified face. Her dress was modest but elegant. Her eyes no longer showed traces of pain or doubt, only power. Too many women. Her voice was clear and strong, resonating throughout the hall through the microphone. Have been forced to feel insignificant. Have been forced to believe they have no value. Have been forced to believe their place is at home washing dishes. I'm here tonight to say that our voices matter, that our dreams are important, and that we are more than capable of leading. Applause erupted. Mr. Harrison, now the Foundation's vice president, was in the front row applauding loudest. The Madison Foundation, Madison continued, is established to be a home for those whose voices have been silenced. We will provide legal assistance to domestic violence victims. We will provide initial capital and business training to housewives who desire independence. We will rebuild shattered dreams because I believe that behind every underestimated woman is a queen ready to rise. Again, thunderous applause filled the room. Madison smiled, a genuine smile that radiated happiness. This was her true victory party. The speech event ended. Madison came down from the stage receiving congratulations from guests. Journalists surrounded her, this time not to report scandal, but to report inspiration. Ms. Madison, what inspired you to create this foundation? Ms. Madison, you are a new icon of female empowerment. While Madison kindly answered questions, suddenly there was a commotion at the service door at the end of the hall. 2 security guards seemed to have difficulty containing a man trying to force his way in. I have to talk to her, Madison. Madison. The entire hall suddenly fell silent. The music stopped. Guests turned toward the source of the commotion. The man managed to break through the guards. He was dirty. His clothes were torn and ripped in several places. His hair was disheveled and greasy. His gaunt and sunken face, covered with an unshaven beard. The stench of sweat and market was detectable immediately several meters away. The man ran, staggered, and fell, right at Madison's feet. It was Richard. Journalists gasped. Cameras immediately captured the amazing contrast of the moment. The elegant queen and the dirty, pleading man. "Madison!" Richard cried. His tears soaked the expensive marble floor. He knelt and grabbed the edge of Madison's dress. "Madison, please, forgive me." Security guards moved quickly to drag him away. "Wait," Madison said. Her voice was calm, but lethal. The guards stopped. Madison looked at the man at her feet. The man who was once so handsome and arrogant. The man who once insulted her. Now he looked more miserable than a beggar under a traffic light. Richard said, My mother is sick. Madison." Richard sobbed without daring to look at his wife's face. "She had a stroke. She's paralyzed. Our apartment stinks and is hot. I don't have money. I'm working as a warehouse boy at the market. I can't stand it anymore. Madison, please, just give me some money for my mother. For your mother, please." He sobbed with tears of a completely broken man. Madison looked at him expressionlessly for a few seconds, then bent down. It was exactly as she had imagined. Her face was placed next to Richard's. Richard's face was covered with snot and tears. "Mrs. Eleanor, you say?" Madison said quietly, but the small microphone on her dress captured every word. "The mother who said my destiny was to be a housekeeper. The mother who laughed when you forbade me from coming to my own party. The mother who told me to wash dishes." Richard trembled. She already received her karma, Madison. She was already punished. Please, have mercy on her." Madison smiled slightly. It was a very cold smile. "And you, Richard, said I would only embarrass you. You said I was simple and provincial. You brought your lover to an event I built with my blood." She stood up, towering over Richard, who was still kneeling. "Before you said I would embarrass you in front of your elite guests. Now look at yourself in front of all my elite guests. Who's begging on the floor like trash? Who's embarrassing now?" Richard couldn't answer. He could only cry. Madison took a deep breath, turned to Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, as we had planned." Mr. Harrison nodded. He stepped forward. "Chief Executive Richard, Ms. Madison, based on humanity, has paid in advance Mrs. Eleanor's apartment rent for 1 more year. She has also arranged an elderly nurse who will visit her twice a day to care for her. Basic medicine costs are also covered." Richard's eyes widened with hope. "Money. So Madison, you forgave me? We can—" "I did this," Madison interrupted. Her voice resonated again. "Not for you or for her. I did it because my religion forbids me from letting another human being suffer, even if that human being is an enemy who insulted me. My duty as a human being goes that far." Hope faded from Richard's face. "As for you, Richard," Madison looked at him. "You're young, you're healthy, You're still strong enough to lift sacks at the market, before you insulted my invisible work. Now enjoy your work that everyone can see." She turned her back on Richard. "Security," she said firmly. "Escort Chief Executive Richard out of my event. Make sure he doesn't appear before my eyes again." "No, Madison, don't do this. Give me a second chance, Madison. I'm still your husband," Richard screamed in panic as the agile security guards lifted his body. Madison stopped, but didn't turn around. "Oh, I forgot," she said. "Our divorce certificates were already issued last week. Richard, we're nothing anymore." That was the final nail in Richard's coffin. He was dragged out of the hall, screaming and kicking, calling Madison's name. The large and luxurious hall doors closed silently before him, drowning his screams. Inside, Madison turned again to the silent guests. She smiled calmly. "My apologies for the small commotion that just occurred," she said. "That's a living example of why this foundation is necessary. Let's continue. There are many brilliant women waiting for us to help them." The applause that followed was even louder than before. The guests had not just seen a philanthropist. They had just seen a queen reclaim her throne with justice. A few months later, Madison was on the balcony of her new penthouse office at Sterling Tower, watching the sunset that turned Chicago golden. Her foundation was a great success. Her company prospered even more. She had finally found peace. Far below, in a dirty market, a thin man with an empty expression pushed a cart full of rotten vegetable remains. He stopped a moment to wipe sweat. His eyes caught a piece of old newspaper trampled in the mud. There was Madison's photo smiling, being awarded as the most influential woman of the year. Richard looked at the photo for a long time. There were no more tears, just a perpetual emptiness. He spat on the ground, angrily kicked his cart, and continued pushing toward the darkness of the night. His karma was completely paid.